Welcome back to the ACIM Book Club. This is our third and final part on the sex material. We're looking at the sex discourse under Miracle Principle 48 today, paragraphs 7 through 18. I'm Alison Anton with the Forgive Nest podcast for A Course in Miracles. In this section on sex, the focus is largely on sexual fantasies. In continuation from Principle 43, Jesus also gives us a practice to use whenever an inappropriate sexual impulse arises, which is blocking our natural miracle impulses from coming up. We can use this for any fear response, actually. We could call this one of the instructions for response to temptation, something to use when we're pulled into an unhealthy thought or feeling, anything like guilt, anger, hostility, or depression, just to name a few. These would all fall under Jesus's larger category of fear. With that, let's start out with our practice statement for today's section that affirms our commitment to replace fear with love. Close your eyes and go within. Allow this statement to work internally with any and all fear in your mind. I deny the power of fear and ask that it be replaced with love. Let that sink in for a sec. I deny the power of fear and ask that it be replaced with love. And you can open your eyes and let's talk about sex from the Course in Miracles perspective. The sex discourse starts at paragraph 7, and this is where he opens the conversation about sexual fantasies. And he also associates it with a much deeper error of usurping reality. I wanted to pull out individual sentences here, and that's why this paragraph is so colorful. But I just think this is a really important paragraph. So let's hold right here for a bit because there's a lot to talk about just in this one paragraph. Remember, he started out the sex discourse from Principle 46 with, I want to finish the instructions about sex because this is an area which the miracle worker must understand. So I think we really need to look at this because fantasies about others might seem private and harmless, but clearly Jesus thinks otherwise, saying they're really a quote unquote attempt to control external reality according to false internal needs. They're not simply neutral thoughts happening inside our minds. He says, twist reality in any way, and you are perceiving destructively. Then here's where I think he's pulling in that our sexual fantasies are a reflection of a much deeper problem. Maybe the very original problem in our mind that led us to our separation. Reality was lost through usurpation, which in turn produced tyranny. And we know from later in the course, and as early as chapter 2 actually, that in our separation from true reality, we tried to make something else other than what God created. And here in this paragraph, I think he's opening the door for us to consider that possibility, that what we're doing here in bodies, particularly fantasizing about other bodies, is a direct reflection of that error in us trying to usurp what is. Even though someone else's body is a projection to begin with, we're compounding that error by trying to manipulate him or her inside our own mind and making their body into something it's not, something he or she never agreed to. Even though it may seem harmless to keep it inside our mind as fantasy, and not acted out physically, the problem of trying to control the external environment is still there inside. We clearly see he wants us to learn respect inside our mind. How and what we think of people is of utmost importance. Several times now, he told us it's up to us to use our thoughts and our bodies either creatively or destructively. And he hits us with this very strong attention-grabbing statement at the end. Now you must choose freely to devote your heritage to the greater restoration. As long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. Complete restoration of the sonship is the only true goal of the miracle-minded. Later in the course, he tells us the way to understand how the separation happened in the first place is to look closely at ourselves now, to study our thoughts and behavior closely right now, because the separation didn't happen then. It continues through a trajectory of our thoughts. Seemingly insignificant fantasies should be looked at closely. Jesus puts emphasis on this, and so I think we should really listen. And as he's also alluded to before, sex and sexual fantasies aren't in themselves pleasurable. He says here, fantasies become totally unnecessary as the wholly satisfying nature of reality becomes apparent. He also talks about our choice of sex partners. According to Jesus, we often choose someone not for truly loving reasons, but because they don't fit our fantasies. The fact is that we're afraid of our fantasies. This is something subconscious. They represent some of our lowest impulses, and we don't like that. So we choose someone we can't act them out with. He says, they are frequently, meaning our partners, are frequently selected precisely because they are not suited to gratify your fantasies. This is not because you want to abandon or give up the fantasies, but because you are afraid of them. But then he says, we still continue to look around for chances to indulge the fantasies. And scrolling down to paragraphs 11 and 12, he says the problem can often be corrected within the existing framework, meaning within the existing relationship agreement. Because if one person shifts their needs, some amount of corresponding shift in the need orientation of the other person must result. So if somebody heals something in their mind about this, the other is likely going to shift too. In this way, we heal the lovelessness that was present in our original choice of them. But a caveat here, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. As we probably know, in the Manual for Teachers, Jesus talks about relationships that do end up separating because all parties involved have learned the most that they can from each other at that time. And here, the steps under paragraph 13, we have an action plan, so to speak, that Jesus gives us that we can use whenever an inappropriate sex impulse arises. He says that sexual impulses can be translated into miracle impulses, as we've heard before. And he gives us a step-by-step solution. The first step is always awareness or recognition of the problem for what it actually is. Know first that this is an expression of fear. So our inappropriate sexual impulses are actually an expression of fear. Your love toward each other is not perfect, and this is why the fear arose. The second step is asking for help, specifically for Jesus to help us. Turn immediately to me by denying the power of the fear, and ask me to help you replace it with love. This shifts the sexual impulse immediately to a miracle impulse and places it at my disposal. Lastly, as always, with every miracle we extend, and this is the active ingredient to every miracle, then acknowledge the true creative worth of both yourself and the other. This places strength where it belongs. These 3 steps are a go-to for so many course students as part of a daily practice whenever we get triggered throughout our day. You might want to print it out or memorize this simple formula. We could call this a response to temptation. In concluding this final discourse on sex, he talks again about how our sexual impulses and sexual tension is just a buildup of unexpressed miracle impulses. And the solution, he says again, this can be truly abated only by releasing the miracle drive, which has been blocked. Converting it to sexual libido merely produces further blocking. And then jumping down a little bit, the recognition of the real creative power in yourself and others brings release because it brings peace. And I personally love these sentences to cap off the sex notes. Remember that you who want peace can find it only by complete forgiveness. You never really wanted peace before, so there was no point in knowing how to get it. I just think that's the perfect way to end because we're right near the end of our miracle principles and entering into the course proper. You never really wanted peace before, so there was no point in knowing how to get it. And here we have before us the complete guide for learning how to bring peace into our lives. And if we've read this far, we surely must want peace. So you can thank yourself for that, and I thank you too. And to ponder for today for your own reflection, how easy is it to accept that you carry tension resulting from a buildup of unexpressed miracle impulses? What, according to Jesus, is the only thing that will bring you true release from this tension? And how does it feel to think that underneath all your different needs, you have only one need, which is God? So let's stop there and we'll end with our closing statement to help with any fear potentially arising from this discussion. All we have to do is just stop for a moment and take the needle off the record. Jesus can help with that if we sincerely ask him. So let's do that right now. Close your eyes and go deeper within. You can imagine Jesus standing right beside you or in front of you, or even holding your hand. And say to him, I deny the power of fear, and ask that it be replaced with love. You can imagine him being sincerely grateful for your willingness in this. I deny the power of fear, and I ask that it be replaced with love. And you can open your eyes, and we'll end this session here. Thanks for joining me in this very important discussion. I'm Alison Anton with the Forgive Nest podcast for A Course in Miracles. It was great talking to you.